Daktari, how are you?
Very fine.
We got to see you finally.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's a busy period. Yeah.
I'm happy to see you, sir.
Thank you very much for this. I've not been to, of course, I've seen some of the work that you are doing with my good friend, Dr. Dan Kanojwang.
Yes.
And I think you are doing a very good job in educating Kenyans.
We really appreciate the compliments from your side. And we're happy to have you. We hope to have you more. But before that, please say hi to Wakenya.
I
can see you have international citizens. Maybe we'll start with Kenyans first, then we can go diaspora.
Kuwasalimia ili kuwa na mdahalo wa kuangalia hii BBI na vitu vingine ni vizuri au si vizuri. My comrades from the continent of Africa, good morning, and I wish you a good week as we talk about our country and hopefully something about Africa now that we know there are conflicts in Tigray and other parts of the continent like the Cameroons, Mozambique, the Arab Democratic Republic of Sahrawi, and many other places that we want to be peaceful for the sake of the continent of Africa.
All right, I think that's even where we'll start, even to begin with, in African conversations. You are seeing the things that are happening in around Africa. Look at Uganda, look at recently elections in Tanzania. Also coming back, I think we have another beef again in Somalia, just next door. There's another drone that landed yesterday around our borders. I don't know whether it belonged to the country, but we're going to have those conversations. But before we go to that, you're not a new face, of course, but there are people as well who would want to know, who is PLO?
I'm a lawyer by training. I've been a teacher of law, and I practice law. Walk around Africa, and I'm using the word walk metaphorically, because I believe that this continent has the opportunity through unity to rise up and be a continent which is respected. I think those are the things that keep me busy, keep me happy, keep me strong, keep me energized.
How has your journey been?
A journey of struggle, because life is a struggle, struggling about things that you believe in, struggling passionately. And I believe that we have surmounted many problems, but we have remained steady with our eye on the ball. The fact that we are around and our ideas are solid as they were when we were students tells me that we have been on the right course.
All right, so what are some of those things that you're very passionate about? You mentioned about passion. This ball that you have your eyes on, which ball is it? What are some of the things that keep you awake at night?
Integrity. Integrity is the mother's milk of true success. Patriotism. Loving one's country without being deflected by narrow ethnic considerations. Pan-Africanism. Holding the belief that as Africans we are equal to all other civilizations, and that if we combine our efforts in our diversity, we can energize the continent. The role of young people in the development of Africa, the role of women in the development of Africa, and honesty, among other things, so that we don't have individuals who think that the occupation of public office is for personal benefit, or the pursuit of public office without regard to anything else. Honesty, integrity, and conviction, and of course humility is at the very heart of it.
In this journey, I'm sure probably in your pursuit of this integrity, you've brushed shoulders with those people who don't see integrity as a currency of value. In this journey, what would you say has been your experience? Do you think integrity is possible?
Oh, of course, there are many good men and women, but I can tell you that there are men and women who are wedded to the devil himself, and they can kill and maim in order to acquire material things. And when you believe in certain things, when you believe in integrity, there are many people who plan your downfall. You earn many enemies, known and unknown, but the truth is that there are many more people who are inclined to do good, and that is why I agree that you don't turn to throw stones at every dog that barks. You keep on keeping on, as the commentators of old said.
You had an opportunity actually to be in a place where you've given the responsibility of restoring integrity, especially in government. That is the ACC. What was your experience like? Because I remember actually you left in a half.
No, remember that the law was amended
Yes.
to abolish the office that I held. So that is the context. That tells you that when you are fighting integrity, there'll be no shortage of men and women who want to curtail what you are doing. And people don't know that fighting corruption is not an easy thing. The people that you are fighting with are the people who shout against corruption during the day are the ones who engage in it. And Kenyans only have to look at their counties, wherever you are. Look at your MCA. You know their salary. How have they built mansions within 8 years? Look at your governors. How have they built the hotels that they are building across the country? How have they acquired their helicopters? There is something that they have done which is not in accordance with the Quran, the Holy Bible, and the law. And yet we worship them. They go to church, as Sauti Soul said, and even if they don't belong to that denomination, our modern day clergy offer them the body of Christ. Even the so-called Church of Christ, through their clergy, have been compromised. It is not easy. It is not for the faint-hearted, but it's important that we must keep on doing what we are doing because it is good to do good. It doesn't mean you'll not make mistakes. You will. But as long as your eyes are on the ball, history will judge you fairly.
How was your experience like?
My experience is that when you believe in things, you fight for them. And you fight with the dignity that allows you to emerge morally strong. And I believe that by the grace of God, the fact that our voices, my voice, continues to be alive and well, it is a testament to the fact that thus far, by the grace of God, I must be doing something right. Whether you agree with me or not, there must be something that I'm doing right, that for the last 33 years, I've remained wedded to this cause. Wow. Like me, hate me, there must be something that I'm doing right.
Mahali, kuna kitu mahali unafanya vizuri.
Yeah, there must be.
All right. What did you say about corruption in a nutshell in this country? Do you think it has become part of us? It's like more of a part of us, like a culture.
There is a deeply seated culture of corruption, of reaping where one has not sown. But that does not mean that there are no good people in this country. There are. In fact, I dare say that many Kenyans are victims of corruption. They pay bribes because they have no choice. They pay bribes because their politicians offer them money. But the truth is that the political culture of this country is defined by corruption. And one of the things that has exacerbated morality, the immorality in this country is negative ethnicity. For Kenyans, I urge you to read a book written by Koigi Wawamwere towards genocide in Kenya, the curse of negative ethnicity. What it tells you is that when people steal, we celebrate them by saying, he is a thief, but he is our thief. And that is tragic because corruption affects education, it affects health, it affects every sector of our economy. And you who are celebrating these thieves, I'm urging you to liberate yourselves. And permit me to say this. I see many people condemning the EACC. They have no idea what it is to investigate a corruption case. The corrupt are some of the most sophisticated individuals. They get the best lawyers, the best accountants, the best professionals in order to defeat the law. Thus far, I think that the EACC has been doing a good job, and those who are condemning them, you professional fault finders, know that corruption is not breaking and entering. It is complex, and you are fought, and you are maligned. You'll be called all names. You'll be accused of all things. except the crucifixion of Christ.
You've mentioned ESCC. ESCC actually has been dubbed for many times as a toothless bulldog. You know, a very big dog that doesn't bite. Why do you think ESCC doesn't bite?
No, that is not true. First of all, do people know the mandate of the ESCC? They don't, because they don't read. The ESCC has 3 mandates. The mandate to educate the people. The question is, do they do that? Yes, they do. The ESCC has the mandate to create an environment where corruption is reduced, the prevention mandate. Do they do that? Yes. The ESCC is involved in recovery of assets. Do they do that? Yes. During this year, they have recovered assets in excess of 2 billion. The ESCC investigates. Once it has investigated, it passes the files to the DPP. The DPP prosecutes. The judiciary listens. The ESCC is neither a dog nor is it toothless. The ESCC has no more than 700 workers. You have a responsibility as a Kenyan to fight corruption. You can't be accepting bribes from your politician, then you blame the ESCC. You can't be giving bribes to the traffic police officer, then you say ESCC is a bulldog. Look at the thing in your eye before you accuse ESCC. Play your part and stop fault finding. ESCC is doing a good job within its mandate.
Wow. Thank you so much for that. Now let's turn it back to you. You have PLO Foundation that you're running. I've been seeing the conversations will be running around Africa and also leadership and criticizing positively on what needs to happen in Africa. What is the role of PLO Foundation? What are you guys doing at PLO Foundation?
The PLO Foundation was founded 30 years ago. And it has been alive and well in critical areas of youth mentorship. It has been alive in the area of education, in the area of agriculture, in the area of health, in the area of invention and innovation. And as I speak to you now, we have young men and women across the continent in 38 African countries, in 10 countries outside of the continent of Africa, doing amazing things. And we are happy with what the young people are doing. Only yesterday, last evening, there was a beautiful conversation being held by young people out of Gaborone in Botswana. Only last week, there was an activity around issues of mentorship in Monrovia, in Liberia, in Uganda, in South Africa, in 38 African countries. Great things improving the quality of the lives of young Africans who are thoroughly energized, who are fantastic Pan-Africanists.
That is how some cheers. Anyway, all right. Good to hear that. Now let's talk about the state of Africa. The other times, around a month ago, we had elections in Tanzania, which were hugely contested. We have elections happening in Uganda, where the government has been seen to be using excessive force against those guys who are in opposition. We also look at what is going on in Ethiopia. I'm pretty sure that these are the conversations that really interest you. Let's start with Tanzania. What do you think about what's going on in Tanzania? Do you think Magufuli is going back democracy?
Let's start from the premise that we are not handling our elections very well. Because in many African countries, the contestants go into the election on the basis that they cannot lose the elections. That if they lose the elections have been rigged. You can't run democracy that way. The other truth is that in Tanzania, and I'm very familiar with what happens in Tanzania, I refuse to believe that it is possible for the opposition in Tanzania to win an election. Why? CCM is so deeply rooted in Tanzania that you cannot move it. You can appear to have support in urban areas, as indeed opposition parties do. But in rural Tanzania, chama cha mapinduzi kidumu, fikra za mwenye kiti zidumu, you can't win the election. You can shout and say you've been rigged, but it is untrue. It is true, of course, that in the run-up to the election, there was a sense in which the opposition was restricted, the media was restricted, and that is regrettable. I believe that we should allow the media to behave responsibly, but they should also be allowed to operate in an environment where they are not too restricted. But that the elections were won by my good friend Tindi Lucy, incorrect. He knows it. When he sits down alone, he knows he cannot beat. You know, when you are competing in Tanzania and the candidate is Magufuli, Magufuli is just the face of a juggernaut called the Chama cha Mapinduzi.
System.
Is a system. Is deeply rooted from TANU to Chama cha Mapinduzi. It's not a joke. From Nyumba Kumi to the headquarters in Dodoma is Chama cha Mapinduzi.
So you actually believe Tundu Lissu never won the elections?
He knows. Tundu knows he never won the election.
So why are we not having a Nusu Mukate in Tanzania?
No, Tanzania is not wired like Kenya. You know the politics in Tanzania, to their credit, there is a sense in which, because of the deeply rooted nature of Chama cha Mapinduzi, there is also responsibility on the part of the opposition. I listened to Mbowe in Chadema, I listened to Membe in ACT Wazalendo, I listened to CUF. There is a sense in which one can say siasa za Tanzania ni siasa za hoja. In Kenya ni siasa za kikabila. Here we mobilize people on the basis of ethnicity, so that the Kikuyu are mobilized on the basis of their Kikuyuness, the Luos are mobilized on the basis of their Luoness, the Kambas in the same way, the Luhyas and everybody else, the Kalenjins in the same way. And therefore, when a party loses or a person loses, he is capable of weaponizing the tribe to the danger of the country. And that is why, therefore, we have these fundamentally ethnic rapprochements or reconciliation. They are not based on principle. They are based on symbolic leadership.
All right. So you actually think Magufuli is a good guy?
Yes, he is a good guy.
What makes you think so?
I think so because I have had the advantage of having a conversation with President John Joseph Pombe Magufuli, and you must ask yourself, what is the role of government? The role of government is to use the resources of the nation to improve the quality of the lives of the majority of the population. Has CCM done so during the stewardship of John Joseph Pombe Magufuli? Yes. Look at infrastructure. You go to Dar es Salaam today, and I've had the advantage of being in Dar es Salaam, in Dodoma, in Mwanza, in Iringa, in Mtwara. Infrastructure. You go into the area of agriculture, cashew nuts, and see what has happened. You go into the area of cashew nuts, rather the area of mining in gold and diamond in Geita and in Mwadui in Shinyanga. See natural gas. See the quality of the people's life. Tanzania has 5 years in advance become a middle-level economy. That administration is doing well. But remember what Saint Just said in France: nobody who is mortal can govern guiltlessly in the mind of fellow men. And remember these words that I was told when I was interning with John Garang de Mabior. As you walk, you have 2 baskets in your hand. One, the things that you do well. The other one, the things that unwittingly you may not do well. At the end of the day, the do-good basket must be heavier than the other basket. That is what allows history to offer a verdict.
Let's talk about the bad basket.
The bad basket,
For Magufuli.
you have men on Magufuli. There is a sense in which I think he could free the media a little. I think that you ought not to be too hypersensitive. There is a sense in which I think the opposition should be allowed to operate a lot more freely. Those are the 2 areas that I think he can do a little better. In any event, he's serving his last term. Let him ensure that that is achieved. But it's also incumbent upon African oppositions to remember that they should not be weaponized by foreign organizations. George Soros is very present in Africa under the mantra of regime change. And we must be wary of that. Where are they getting their money? Whose agenda are they articulating? So we must never forget that the West, through the neo-colonial project, is alive and well, and they want to control African governments. And if you are found to be engaged in that regard, then it is in the nature of governments for the sake of the nation to protect themselves within the limits of the law.
All right, let's move into Uganda. Let's just cross over to Uganda. What's going on in Uganda? Museveni is saying he's protecting our future.
In 1986, when Yoweri Kaguta Museveni became the president of Uganda, I was elated because Yoweri said the right things. One of the problems in Africa, he said, is leaders who refuse to leave office, and I cheered Yoweri. He said, beyond the age of 75, science has demonstrated that all your faculties begin to go south. We should never allow anybody above the age of 70 to be the president of any country. I cheered Yoweri. He said, we cannot allow ourselves to create an environment where people cannot express themselves freely. I cheered Yoweri. But things have changed so very dramatically. First, he changed the constitution to eliminate term limits. Second, he changed the constitution to allow people to contest beyond age 75. He himself will be age 76 next year in the year of election. And I now see him frustrating the young Bobby Wine. I did so to Kizza Besigye. I sat down with Yoweri 2 years ago during UNCTAD. One of the greatest things about Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, you call his office, they'll return your call. Wow. And make an arrangement. And he'll meet you. And he'll engage you intellectually. And I told him politely as I could muster, Your Excellency, is it not right that you should leave office? This is what he said. You do not know African politics. And what do I do when I leave office? I said, be the elder statesman and be the one who runs East African Confederation. You could be her first president. He asked me to do a concept note, which I did. He has not responded for the last 2 years.
Until now, he's disappeared. There's something you mentioned about Tanzania. the way there's been some politics that have been going around, and I think you've also picked it up on Tanzania about CCM. And there has been there's a clip. I'll play the clip for you. There's another clip. Some other professor who was really arguing about African politics and the fact that you must understand African politics in the sense that people say let's not give money to citizenry, but when you go to campaign, these guys, the first thing they'll ask you is, give us the money. They don't care about the agenda. Anyway, flipping it back to Tanzania, you've talked about how deeply rooted CCM is in Tanzania. The same argument has been brought to Uganda. And they're saying you guys are underestimating Museveni. You think Museveni is a pushover. But in the grassroots, he has a supporter in it. The only people who are making noise are in the urban centers. Would you still argue the same?
Oh, yeah. One of the things that many of us commentators, and I think sometimes we are very superficial and almost naive, because we forget that NRM is a freedom fighting movement in the same nature as Frelimo, as SWAPO, as ANC, as MPLA, as SPLM. These are movements that grew out of very painful circumstances. And remember that Africa is almost 80% rural. Those in the rural area are not connected to the economy. They are not complaining about unemployment. Yes. They are not complaining about electricity. They don't have it anyway. They are not complaining about running water. They go to the stream anyway. They are not talking about garbage collection anyway. And therefore, when you hear people saying that the NRM government is a bad regime, it makes greater sense in the urban areas, those who watch television and listen to radio and listen to foreign commentators. But the truth is, when the elections are actually held, there are people who vote for NRM in order to immunize themselves against Idi Amin. They know nothing else. They are saying, if you vote against NRM, Amin will come back. They don't even know that Amin is dead. So that is what you are competing with. It is completely different from when you are voting in Norway or Denmark, where you don't have to hold a political rally. You can address the entire nation through the media, and people are going to vote on the basis of health, education, pension, and all those things. So that is the other thing that we don't remember. So it is not easy to remove NRA, NRM. And the generals themselves have been heard to say, we will not salute anybody outside of the movement. When people say that, it's not a simple thing. It's not a simple thing. But how I wish and pray that Yoweri could do the thing that I desire. Midwives a change. And he sits like our joint mentor with him, Mwalimu Julius Kambarage Nyerere, and lives for 10 years watching man, woman after woman becoming the president, and you say, lo and behold, I built something that succeeded. Because, as Nyerere used to say, you are not successful until your successor succeeds.
Wow. So let me ask you, Dr. On that note, on the issues of you want Museveni to step aside after winning an election?
I hold the view, because the die is now cast. He's going to be the NRA-NRM candidate. There is nothing that stops him after 2 years from saying, I've served, I've now seen it, I'm now leaving office, and I will be a part of the NRA-NRM from outside of it, so that there is a peaceful handover of power. See, the danger is, because you can also not discount and underrate public discontent, no matter how entrenched you are. Remember the fate of Mengistu Haile Mariam in Ethiopia. You remember the fate of Omar el-Bashir. You remember the fate of Hosni Mubarak. It is possible for a people to create an environment once they conquer fear that becomes untenable, and even the invincible, the apparently invincible, can come down like Humpty Dumpty, as we were taught in our younger days.
Do you think giving out power is really ingrained in African leaders?
Yes.
Do you think it's in their software?
I think there is a sense in which it is not easy because we don't understand the purpose of power. What is the purpose of power? Power gives you a position of honor and privilege to serve fellow man, not because you are better than them, but because perhaps by dint of courage and circumstances, you've come ahead, and therefore you are the representative of their agenda. That is why we call people who are representatives honorable, because we have honored them and privileged them to midwife the resources that we have given to them to improve the quality of our life. In fact, the American Declaration of Independence, which I love, says, in part, we hold this truth to be self-evident, that all men are born equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And for this purpose, governments are formed amongst men to help them achieve this. And if they fail to do so, it is the right of the people to remove them. Many people in Africa don't appreciate that, but there are those who do. Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela will go down in history as having appreciated that. He could have been the president for life. Sam Nujoma in Namibia did that. Ian Khama did that. Hifikepunye Pohamba in Namibia did that. Mwalimu Kambarage Nyerere did that. Deselani in Ethiopia resigned very young to allow for Abiy Ahmed to become. So sometimes we are very negative, and yet there are examples. Johnson Sirleaf left power. And so there are quite a number of African leaders who have actually left power voluntarily. But those who have not, those who arrogate to themselves the monopoly of honor and privilege and wisdom, Mobutu Sese Seko, Robert Gabriel Mugabe, Mengistu Haile Mariam, Idi Amin, and Laurent Gbagbo, those Omar el-Bashir, Hosni Mubarak, and that ilk, Habib Bourguiba in Tunisia, people remove them and they destroy their countries. So let us also remember that there are good examples and there are bad examples, and that this is not an African thing. As I speak to you now, in Belarus, the leader has refused to leave office. In Ukraine, the leader had to be removed. In Kazakhstan, the leader had to be removed. In the United States of America, we are removing Donald Trump, and he's wailing at and kicking at every corner. But for strong institutions, Donald Trump would not leave office. So this is not uniquely African.
The same conversation is going on in Kenya right now. Hayada Twali the other day was saying that Uhuru Kenyatta tano tena after BBI.
That is a very unfortunate statement from Francis, whom I know very, most unfortunate, because the truth is President Kenyatta will conclude his term in the year 2022. And in Kenya, to our credit, I think we have now created a very good tradition that you serve your term. Daniel Moi did, Mwai Kibaki in great dignity, and he's remained dignified. Left, President Kenyatta, there are so many things to do around the continent. President Kenyatta is now the UN ambassador for youth affairs. That is something that he can run with. And he'll be 60, he'll be 61 when he leaves. Let him ask David Cameron what he's doing right now. There are many young people who are doing things, even within Africa. He'll find Ian Kama in Botswana, is a retired Joachim Chisano, Johnson Salif, Motlante, Swapo with our good friend Sam Nuyoma, Ifikepunye Pohamba, Serese Kama. There are so many retired African leaders who are doing beautiful things and did beautiful things. So this idea that somebody is young, what is the life expectancy in Kenya? It is below 50 and below 60. Uhuru would have lived beyond Kenya's life expectancy. And he can consult and he'll find there are beautiful things to do. Francis, stop it. Stop poisoning President Kenyatta.
What do you tell the president? Kenyatta himself.
The president, don't listen. Don't listen to such people. Mwalimu Nyerere, with whom I served in his foundation in the 1990s, once told me that when he wanted to leave office, people came to him. Kamwambia, mwalimu usiwache, usingatuke, utatuacha mayatima. Akasema, nyinyi watu wazima hivi, nitawacha mayatima nyinyi. Ni ubinafsi huu. So President Kenyatta must say it firmly. And he must tell those people around him who are telling him that nonsense to stop it. He's going to leave office and he's going to serve Kenya in other capacities. I believe he can, and I believe he will.
So Uhuru ende nyumbani. Baada ya time yake, he should go.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can find a video. It's a video.
I need to say that those who come here talking about NRM this, NRM has a lot of money, waning. Power is for keeping. It doesn't matter how good you are. Obote was a wonderful leader. Obote didn't steal. Obote didn't steal any money. He didn't build mansions. He didn't know. But he lost power twice. Idi Amin was a wonderful leader. Look at what he was able to achieve. But Idi Amin understood Sinoraj. He understood Sinoraj. That's why he built the UN, the building, the embassy in New York, in Japan. He built airports, underground airports. But he also didn't know how to keep power. Museveni knows how to keep power. He does. And he's not going to leave it like that. And he say, oh, you know what? You have too much money. He's not going to leave it. You know, listening to some of these MPs.
These are most unfortunate. It's most unfortunate because he doesn't understand, in my view, or if he does, he has deliberately chosen to ignore. I know his son is also a member of parliament.
Yes, he's an MP. He's an MP.
Yes, so I know him very well, and he has very interesting ideas, but this is a most unfortunate because what is power? Power is service. He's serving your people. And when you say that his power is for keeping, then you don't know what it is because you can't keep power forever. You die anyway. So when you understand what power is, and you can go to countries such as the Scandinavians, you see how power is dealt with for the benefit of the people. Power is so soft that you don't even feel it because you only see services. When I grew up here in Nairobi, when I didn't know the mayor, but I knew one thing in Jericho. On Monday, they would collect garbage. On Wednesday, they would collect garbage. On Saturday, when we were not in school, they would collect garbage. and we would sing Kamero na Kauti na Kagoro Kamwe. I knew I paid 20 shillings and I would go to school and I would get exercise books. I knew our houses were painted once every year and we'll immediately use charcoal to write on it. I knew they were fumigated every 6 months. I didn't need to know my mayor. I didn't need to know my MCA. I never knew them, but services were being rendered. I remember I took third-class train from Kisumu to Nairobi, and it was all nice. I remember I paid 25 shillings in OTC. I remember I had a bus pass and paid only 30 cents to travel within Nairobi. Services were being rendered. And I remember that campaigns were held with the people on opposite sides campaigning. There were no goons. That is power. And that is power exercised for the benefit of the people. This jaundiced understanding of power, which is to be kept, is completely improper. It is unfortunate. Such ideas belong to the dustbin.
All right. Ethiopia. Is Ethiopia slipping back to civil war?
Ethiopia is a complex country. The second largest population with 100 million. Remember that when Haile Selassie was removed from power in 1974, I was in Standard 7 then. Ethiopia was a feudal country. Remember at that time, it is the Deg regime of Mengistu Haile Mariam that removed him. They tried to be communist. After that, there was the insurgency of the Tigray People's Liberation Army, which included, of course, the man that I respect, Meles Zenawi, and Isaias Afwerki, who is now the president of Eritrea. And it must be remembered that when TPLF took over power in 1990, the country was divided. There was the Oromo Liberation Army. There was, of course, the army, the militia amongst the Amhara. And these are just the major communities. There had been a war in Ogaden. And the constitution, therefore, recognized these issues, with Ethiopia currently being divided into ethnic regions, 9 regions, with the possibility of secession. Yeah. And my fear now, and this must be understood in the context, that when Desalegn left power for Abiy, who is from the Oromo, the understanding is, or was, that that would quieten the Oromo Liberation Front. The Oromo are the second largest ethnic group in Africa, if not the largest. Of course, the Hausa say they are, and the Yoruba also make the claim, but with over 40 million. But the Tigray are the most militarized. And you can see that when it was decided that the elections be postponed, they went on to conduct their own election. They said they no longer recognized the government in Addis Ababa, and it became necessary, unfortunately, to engage and to prosecute this war, which has now reached Mekelle. And my fear is that victory may be declared, but I see a long insurgency, and you can already see it. Missiles directed towards Asmara to internationalize the war. Soldiers have disappeared into the mountains. Some, I think, have mixed with the refugees in Sudan. And that worries me, because it will also energize Oromo, it will energize Ogaden, and I would have loved to see the AU coming a lot more forcefully. They were diplomatic. The envoys led by Chisano, Johnson Sirleaf, and Motlanthe that saw Prime Minister Abiy was a little too diplomatic, perhaps necessary, but Ethiopia worries me. Because if we don't take care of it, the entire Horn, Kenya is going to have refugees, Djibouti refugees, Somalia refugees, Eritrea refugees, South Sudan refugees, Sudan refugees, and with the insurgency, the region could become very unstable. So it is something that I think Matemela, Cyril Ramaphosa, who is the current chair of the AU, should take very seriously. IGAD should take very seriously, and the East African community should take very seriously. And it's unfortunate that at the same time, the Kenyan government is being accused of interfering in Somalia.
Yes, I've seen already. They've already called the ambassadors. Yes. They also sent ours back home. And the EU keeps quiet on all these things.
Oh, AU with Muhammad Faki. Disappointing, disappointing. You know, the AU now needs individuals who are truly energized. I may be wrong on this, But I think that Muhammad Faki sees the AU as a retirement site and a preparation site for his own stab at the presidency. Remember, he was the foreign minister of Chad, and remember, he's already being touted that after the second term, he's going to go in unopposed in February 2021, that he will be the next president of Chad. So he doesn't want to ruffle feathers. The chairman of the AU Council should be a crusader who loves Africa, who's prepared to energize the African population, who's prepared, if necessary, to annoy the politicians. We don't have that. Too careful, to the detriment of the continent.
But then
you talked of a bulldog at the beginning.
Yes.
If there is a bull, which is a dog, which has no teeth, it is the AU, not ESCC.
And it quite seems that in Africa, I'll give you a small breather, then we'll come back. But it's very clear that in Africa, institutions are structured to accommodate maybe political rejects and retirees. Even when you talk about the positions that they've been creating, look at African infrastructure, whatever that Raila Odinga is running. What does it do? How many roads does it build? How many kilometers of road does it build in Africa? Has it championed for development? What is the oversight on all these things? What is the accountability of that office? Africa and creating offices.
Nomze Odinga, whom I respect, but whose political views I do not share, he has a role. He's played a role. History will remember him partly fondly, sometimes not so fondly, but will acknowledge that he came and that he served. But when you talk about infrastructure, there must be a context. When you talk about Inga Dam, for example, which they keep on talking about and holding meetings about, it must be an adopted African Union infrastructural program under the aegis of the Union. Otherwise, you can hold meetings and seminars and other things, but you will not achieve anything. Look, if infrastructure was a great thing, I would have loved to hear that office talking about the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, which is threatened by, is it Trump who said that Egypt may one day bomb it? I would have wanted them to talk about the Julius Nyerere hydroelectric power which is going on. I would have wanted them to talk about a railway line that takes us from Djibouti to Dakar. I would have wanted them to talk about the oil pipeline from Angola to East Africa. I would have wanted them to talk about the oil situation in the Bakassi Peninsula. I would have wanted them to talk about infrastructure in that way, the Yamoussoukro Protocol on the open skies and building of airports. But as you rightly say, we create too many offices to massage people's egos. Let me be blunt, so that you can say in your card that I'm the head of this, I'm the head of NEPAD, I'm the head of Great Lakes. But when you look at the dividends that we derive from such offices, zilch, to use the slang, zilch.
Nada.
Hakuna.
Zero. Hakuna kitu. All right, I'll give you a small break. I'll look at the comments briefly. Then we come back now to Rudi Kenya, to Rudi DNA, to Patana Shida Zetu. I can see Wilson To is saying watching, Magdalene Obogi watching. Thank you so much. Elizabeth Karanja, Wisdom Galo Center. Wilson To says GB, you should have brought Barack Boluka too. Yeah, I think you get, people see you as a pair with Barack Boluka. All right, I'm seeing Upper John Nyakwal. When an African man leaves his homestead, he must make sure that he comes home with something by all means. By hook or crook, it's evident everywhere in Africa. Men from nearby community would organize and raid men in the next community and run away with their belongings and other sources of sources of livelihood, like livestock. Cattle rustling is such a practice. Therefore, theft and corrupt practices are deeply rooted in us. Good morning, Bitokpas. My greetings to Professor PLO Lumumba. Ezra Rotisa is using wisdom. Benedict Okino, please, Gerald, move faster to the men. Oh, hi. You're there. Elizabeth Karanja, politely to Museveni. He's wondering how you so polite to Museveni. I'm seeing Matthias Jeboy, BBI is the climax, eagerly waiting on PLO's tech. I will get in there. Max Kimali says very educative. Elias Chepkieng, Professor PLO, I'm elated by the discourse. Thank you so much. Bernard Chiriad, BBI, I would want to listen to what he say about it. Kibor Lagat, LOPLO Lumumba, I'm leaving for work, but my questions are, what happened between Uhuru and Raila Miguna. What is the progress of corruption fight in Kenya as compared with the international fight? Do you think if BBI passes, can Uhuru start afresh as alleged? What happened with Ruto? Corrupt cases, as they political? Because none has been prosecuted. Keyboard Lagat from Eldoret. Jediso Congo says BBI is not a priority. Give us time to absorb some wisdom. Elizabeth Karanja, PLO, Encyclopedia. How much you're wondering where you get all those names that you're mentioning in the project? I think I'll need 15 years to cram 3 dams in Africa. And I say, don't comment. What an exciting show this morning with PLO. This is a great guy. Thank you so much. Yeah, all men are equal, but Kenya, we are not reasoning. Kaniariwa says these guys are working at drive. Right, David Kamal, good morning, Team Tackle. Good morning to you. Max Kimeli, even more, he left power. Kins Bona PLO Lumumba, normalize your English. Judy Maya PLO is using knowledge and history. What a show. Asante sana. I wish I could read all the comments. The comments are really running in quick and fast. But I want us to come back home. What did you say is the state of the nation?
You know, the nation, because of COVID, is suffering. The nation is suffering. Look at our tourism sector. We have lost jobs in the millions. In the month of August this year, I'm told we received no more than 5,000 visitors. Young men and women employed in the sector are unemployed. Look at our agriculture, is suffering. Look at our manufacturing sector, it is suffering. The net effect is that in truth, all the 47 counties in Kenya are technically insolvent. Just this morning, I'm reading that the young men and women who are contracted to make the desks have not been paid. Many who are engaged by government and quasi-governmental institutions have not been paid. Our economy is not doing well. We are now going back to the IMF. When you see a country going back to the IMF, know that the economy is moving away from the high dependency unit into the ICU. And what is going to happen? We are going to have structural adjustment. We are going to be asked to devalue our currency. Imports are going to be more expensive. And of course, it is going to impact on our health sector, education sector, agriculture sector. We are not going to create jobs. We are going to have problems. And remember the infrastructure that we borrowed, for example, the SGR. A single track lane will never make profit. Never. Never has a single track diesel-driven railway line made profit anywhere in the world. And look at our Kenya Power and Lighting, a monopoly that is now running an overdraft, a monopoly. Look at our Kenya Meat Commission, tottering until it went to the military. Now it is beginning to wake up.
They have been given 563 million.
It's amazing. And we never stopped eating meat. And yet it became bankrupt. That tells you that the economy is not doing very well. We are in dire straits. And I would have loved to see our parliament convened on an emergency basis to discuss the state of the Kenyan economy. I would have loved to see that, but I have not.
The only thing we are converging around is the politics of the day.
Which is sad. Which is sad. Sad because, as the saying goes, politicians look to the next elections, not the next generation. My friend Muhisa Kitui tells me, and he said it publicly, you cannot solve political bad manners through constitutional amendments. We now believe that through amending the constitution,
now we can fix our
political bad manners. We are just ill-mannered. And we will not. And this is what brings us, if you may, to the BBI.
And a question even before you are a user of the Constitution.
Yes.
You participated in the birthing of a Constitution. You know the journey that we've come all along to have the Constitution 2010. We've taken over 30 years, close to 30 years.
Correct.
Do you feel we have a constitutional moment, even before we go to that? Do you feel like, are we pregnant?
No, we are manufacturing a constitutional moment. There is no constitutional moment. We are manufacturing one. When we had a constitutional moment in 1980s, after the 1980 Mlolongo election, The Moi administration recognized there was a constitutional moment. That is why he put together the Saitoti Commission. And when the Saitoti Commission had moved around the country, people told them things that they never expected. And of course, we came up with the 1992, then the politicians torpedoed it. Then in 1996, we had a constitutional moment. The politicians torpedoed it through the IPPG. Then we now had a constitutional moment. And once again, we had the CKRC, in which I served for nearly 4 years. There was a constitutional moment. The constitution had been dismembered from 1964, so dismembered that in the year 1969, the constitution had changed character and had to be reorganized and reissued anew. From 1969, we see the fundamental changes, 2A. And all those other changes. There was a constitutional moment. And that constitutional moment was once again squandered after we went to the bombers of Kenya. We had the so-called Kilifi and Wako drafts, and we squandered the thing in 2005. And because we missed the constitutional moment, we had the post-election violence in the year 2007. Yes. And therefore, when Kofi Annan came and brokered the fragile peace amongst the political class, we now are working in an environment that required a matter of intervention constitutionally. That is how we ended up with the Constitution of Kenya 2010. There was no constitutional moment. You know, after the elections in 2013, which was won by President Kenyatta, and I think he won the election, despite the contestation to the country, he won the election. He even won the 2017 election. Fact. The election may have been bedeviled by certain things, but I keep on asking, those who support BBI, had NASA won the elections, would you have had a BBI? No. No. And they know it. The BBI was essentially the product of a ceasefire. A president who had won an election, remember the election was nullified. There was a repeat election which was boycotted by the opposition, who then, in a manner that I've never understood, purported to have their candidate sworn in on the basis of the results of a nullified election in which they participated. I've never understood. Is without precedent in the world. Then, President Kenyatta, having recognized that the opposition had weaponized their constituency, Kenya was receiving very bad press, and he recently himself admitted that the Kenya was on the brink. And remember, at that time, there are elements within the opposition who actually suggested, complete with a map, that Kenya should be partitioned. That is how grave and close we were to a civil war. And wisdom did prevail, both internally and externally, and there was a rapprochement. This is normally what is described as the handshake on the 9th day of March, the year 2018, involving Mzee Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta, the president. After that, I think BBI was an afterthought. I may be wrong, and I will be corrected through force of reason rather than by reason of force. The BBI then came that we have signed this thing, but it's too hollow. A handshake in and of itself doesn't mean much. Let us flesh it out. Let us populate it. Let us therefore come up with a BBI, which had a 9-point agenda. Initially, to deal with electoral problems. That was the fundamental mandate of the BBI, that it appears that every time we go into an election, we don't end up well, we end up quarreling. What can we possibly do to ensure that this does not happen? And therefore, that was their mandate. The BBI committee was then put together in a mostly unprocedural way. Individuals who served there were never interviewed, like everybody else had agreed that when you want to serve in public office in Kenya, you ought to be subjected to a competitive process. They were not. They were appointed by the political players. They used public money, and they came up with an initial BBI report, which was so badly done that they had to go back.
They actually denied. They said, no, this is not our document.
Yes.
The BBI one.
Yes, the BBI one. I don't know where it was manufactured from. Then they now came up with this one. And I think as they go through the process, short-term political interest then takes center stage. So that BBI, in my view, and I want to be candid and blunt, and it doesn't mean that I'm right. It simply means that this is my opinion. I think that in the eyes of a number of politicians, the BBI is a Trojan horse. And I'll give a little history about the Trojan horse.
Please.
The Trojan horse was a horse that was created, a wooden horse, that was created by the Greeks when they invaded Troy, and they hid soldiers inside it. And Helen of Troy warned them and said, even when a Greek bears a gift, never trust him. So a Trojan horse is a wooden thing that is created to achieve a purpose other than the declared purpose. In the minds of some politicians, this is now a Trojan horse that will deliver to them the presidency, will deliver to them the prime ministership, will enable them to contest these offices. And who are these? The governors, people in opposition whose term is coming to an end. That is why you end up with a BBI report now that purports to take over the work of Parliament. It purports to take over the work of the Law Reform Commission. It purports to take over the work of the Attorney General, and prescribes things that really, in my view, don't make constitutional sense. The Constitution has yet to be fully implemented. And let me give you a few examples. They introduce Article 10A. 10A says that we will now become a good citizen of Africa, and we believe in African Confederation. But that is what is said in the Treaty of the East African Community. You don't need it in our constitution.
I've also said we need to appreciate our black color.
Yeah, I mean, you don't need.
We had a problem with
we must be the only constitution in the world which will have such a provision. The 18A says we must respect our parents. The Bible says so. The Quran says so. The Torah says so. Do you need that in a constitution? That we now must change. The people called cabinet secretaries must now be called ministers. How does that help in post-election? I mean, it is so sad. And then they say that the counties will now have 35% of the budget. Give more functions. And it could even be 80. You don't need to write that in, or even 100. You don't need to write that in the Constitution. Then they say that in order to have inclusivity, we must now have a prime minister, a deputy prime minister, two of them. Did we not, was Jomo Kenyatta not the prime minister of Kenya in 1963? Did we not amend the Constitution in 1964 to make Jomo Kenyatta the president of Kenya? What has happened? Was Raila Amolo Odinga not the prime minister in the year 2008? Don't we remember the conflict between Raila Amolo Odinga, the prime minister, and Kalonzo Musyoka, the vice president, and the conflict in parliament which allowed Marende to deliver a decision which we described by the media as Solomonic? Wasn't there conflict? Did we not have Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta as a deputy prime minister? Did we not have Musalia Mudavadi as a deputy prime minister? Did we not change that in the Constitution of Kenya 2010? Why are we bringing it in after only 10 years? Then we are told, and I am a supporter of women's involvement because of the historical disadvantage that they have suffered over the years. I'm therefore affirmative action. I supported it at Bomas, and I do. But look at their prescription. We introduced 360 seats. And if we don't get enough women, then we go to the party list, and on the basis of the votes that have been cast, we top up until we get a number that ensures that there's no gender is more than 2/3. We'll do that for 15 years. They have now introduced a term limit. Our parliament could end up being one of the largest in the world relative to our GDP. Do we want to do that? Then you go down to the counties, it is the same top up, and they now cap it up as 10 years. I mean, it is so sad that a country that is so bedeviled with problems is now adding more. And then I hear somebody telling me, oh, the prime minister will not earn a higher salary. What is a salary in the life of any public office? It is the other hidden costs. Tea of 11 million in your office, per diems, the vehicles. Salary is 0.00001% of what it takes to take care of an office. And then we are told many things are going to happen with BBI, that Higher Education Loans Board was one of them. Really? Shouldn't the Board of Higher Education Loans Board sit there? Then we are told that the youth are going to have tax holiday. Oh, if you don't have work, what is a holiday in the first place? If you don't have work, what is the value of a holiday? Then you create a youth commission. Don't we have many of those youth things?
You actually have a ministry.
Yeah, we have a ministry for youth. So what is the commission going to do that the ministry cannot do? So when you look at the BBI, and it's so painful that the political leadership thinks, this is what pains me as a Kenyan, the assumption that Kenyans are so stupid, so desperate that they can be told what to do and they will not question it. And we are now being told there is no time. Time for what? Who is Kenya being wound up? Kenya is the next, and we'll die and leave Kenya here. There is time. We need not and we must not have a referendum before the next election. In fact, I dare say, because of the poisoned environment, let us postpone this BBI business until after the elections in 2022, when there is sobriety. When there is sobriety, then we can begin to discuss. And remember, this is something I must say. Parliament, Kenyan Parliament, in its wisdom, in the month of February, the year 2014, did mandate the Auditor General of the Republic of Kenya to undertake a social audit of the Kenyan Constitution. Ouko did so, and I was one of the persons who did quality check. He did so and released a report in 2016 in which he said, amongst other things, that we have too many members of parliament. We should reduce them. We have too many commissions. We should reduce them. He fell short of saying that we had too many counties. 47 counties? The United States of America, with a population of 330 million, with a GDP of 20 trillion, has only 50 states. And yet, as I speak to you now, it is more expensive to take care of a Kenyan governor than it is to take care of a governor in the state of California, which is only one state and whose economy is 15 times larger than Kenya. Who said we needed deputy ministers? What do? I only know 3 members of parliament in Nairobi. What are the members? I don't know the others. I don't know my MCA. I don't know what they do. Now we are saying that we have had the NMS. Nairobi is going to be added 12 constituents. To do what? If there were MPs working, MCAs working, why would we have General Badi being appointed by President Kenyatta? What are they doing? Tell me another thing. If you have a constituency development fund, why do you need a ward fund? Is the ward not in the constituency? And indeed, if you have the county government with a governor, why do you need those funds? Why don't those funds just go to the county, and then we have a vote for the constituency and a vote for the ward? I mean, you know, sometimes it is so painful to read a document which, I mean, this is how not to amend a constitution. This is now how not to write a constitution. Unfortunately, I think the people who are proposing this amendment have the wherewithal to put it down our throat. They have the capacity.
I've actually said you'll take it like malaria drugs.
Oh, yeah. They have the capacity. But let them remember this. Let them remember this. There have been leaders in the world who thought that they were larger than life, almost as large as death. But they too have their comings and their goings. So when we are amending a constitution, let us think of the next generation and not the next elections. But even if they force it down our throats, we will have our say, so that history may record that when our constitution was being mutilated for no reason, we raised our voices even if they could not be heard at their most eloquent. That will be our contribution to history.
Wow. That's very profound.
Churches have spoken. The Muslim ulamas have spoken. The imams have spoken. The academics have spoken. Everybody has spoken, saying, let us reason together. The political class, at least some of them are saying, we shall not reason with you. Yet even God in his majestic divinity calls the people, God calls the people and say, let us come and reason together. Our politicians are saying, no, there is no time. What is the time? Who is this who is prescribing time?
Where are we going?
I will wake up very early in the morning to vote no. Very early in the morning to vote no, even if I'm on the losing side. Unless people retreat and say, let us reason together.
Wow. That's very profound. You've gone back to history. Even before I spin back the history of BBI and all these conversations, how do we protect our constitution? You've talked about mutilation of the constitution. How do you protect it to an extent that you don't wake up tomorrow, PLO, we come, we shake hands and we say, now let's solemnize our marriage, the political marriage, the change of our constitution. How do we protect our constitution from pursuit of personal gratuities?
You know, I've been reading, I've read a few friends of mine who are as frustrated as I am. I've read Yashpal Guy commenting on this. I've read my good friend Ahmed Nasir speaking about it, David Ndii, I've heard Martha Karua. I've read the thesis which is written by my good friend Professor Githum Wigai, who talks about the amendments of the Constitution. And Githu, in an article written in 1993 when we were at the CKRC, said that the Kenyan Constitution has been dismembered so badly that we do not know how to deal with it. During the same year, Professor Ali Mazrui, the late, said, if African politics is ethnically prone, can we have ethnic-proof constitutions? We introduced Articles 255, 256, and 257 in the Constitution to create an environment where it is not easy to amend the Constitution. But see how we had an attempt to amend the Constitution through Okoa, Kenya, which failed. We had an attempt to amend the Constitution through Punguza Mizigo, which was not allowed to proceed. We now have an attempt at amending the Constitution.
Through BBI.
Even through BBI. It would appear that the appetite of the political class, the current political class, to interfere with the Constitution is so deeply seated that even when you want to create a rigid environment, they don't care. You know, Bitok, when you hear that we are going to spend 14 billion to undertake a referendum, and I'm told, I do not know whether it's correct, they have never released the amount of money that they spent in this BBI.
So far.
They haven't, but it must be in the billions. And at the same time, doctors are dying because there is no PPEs.
Wow.
At the same time, our children are dying because there are no masks. At the same time, people who supply desks have not been paid. At the same time, my good friend Fred Matiang'i, Dr. Fred Matiang'i, says that 40,000 police officers don't have police uniform because we have no resources. At the same time, we are borrowing money from the IMF. At the same time, we are having the Kenya Power increasing tariffs. At the same time, we are paying for SGR through taxes. At the same time, those who did work for counties cannot be paid. At the same time, counties have not received money for the last 3 months. Then you tell me that the priority is BBI, then I cannot understand you. Then I lose you. Then I do not know who you are. Then I do not know what you want. Then I do not know whether you love Kenya. Then I do not know what you intend to do with Kenya. And that is my frustration with the people that I call the BBI Knights. What? The country is on fire, and you are not bringing the fire engine. You are asking us to build a new house. We forget about the old. Educate me, persuade me, not through insults. Persuade me by force of reason. And we are ready to be persuaded that that is the priority. It is true that our constitution can be improved, but what can never be improved? Let us implement this one first. Unfortunately, when God wants to destroy a country, sometimes it makes her leaders impervious to reason. I hope that this is not the case with our country. People out there must now ask. We are told that BBI is going to transform our lives. I want to talk to the people in Nyanza. How will BBI revive Sony Sugar, Muhoroni, Miwani, Mumias? How will BBI revive the cotton industry? How will BBI revive the cooperative industries, the fishing cooperatives? The people in Mombasa, how will BBI help Ramisi? How will they help Salt? How will they help Cashew Nut? Those who are in Central Province, is your milk going to be better produced? You are going to have better milk because of BBI? Is the coffee yield and the tea yield going to be improved? In Kericho with Finlay closing, will BBI change all this? The young men and women who have lost in Ministry of Tourism, on the day that we endorse BBI, if it will happen in the month of June, will we now create 3 million jobs courtesy of BBI? Or will merely have created the offices of the Prime Minister and Deputy Prime Ministers and the opposition, and will have renamed Cabinet Secretaries, Ministers, and will now give MPs a career progression of being cabinet ministers and have deputy prime ministers? I want to know how this BBI is going to revive the institutions that have died, how Intercontinental Hotel is going to be open courtesy of BBI, how Mayfair Hotel in Nairobi is going to open courtesy of BBI, how garbage collection will improve simply because we have 12 more MPs in Nairobi. I want to be told. When I'm told these things, I'll be in the forefront of campaigning for BBI. Tell us, don't intimidate us, don't threaten us, don't troll us, don't insult us, don't cajole us. Just tell us. Just reason with us. Like God said, let us come and reason with the people. Accept that you do not have the monopoly of wisdom. You are mortals just as us. You may mean well, but when you have too many people asking too many fundamental questions, turn back and said, Waswahili husema baniani mbaya kiatu chake dawa. Sisi ndio baniani hao wabaya, kiatu chetu huenda ni dawa.
Wow. I'll give you a water break as I throw it to Lucia to make a few commentaries. Wow. Anyway, Lucia.
It's very hard to speak after that, Gerald. Very difficult.
In fact, this is a time we should be crying because those are very tough questions.
I'm so
They are very
touched.
tough questions.
I can relate to his frustration. He actually speaks my language, just in better English. But everything he says, I can relate to. You know, I actually have a few questions because it has been said, and I think I'm one of the people who has said this more times than I'd like to admit it. There is nothing in this country that is going to move unless we have the political goodwill. And I've been fought on this because I'm told, oh, we need legislation and policy. But we do have legislation and policy. I think our country has some of the best legislation and policy in the entire world, but it only remains to be good on paper, and the implementation is zilch. How then do we do we make sure that implementation is done? Because as a young person, I'd give you an example, and I'm really glad you spoke about this. The BBI report talks about a 7-year tax holiday. But that is based on the assumption that you finished school, you couldn't get a job, you approached the Youth Enterprise Development Fund, and you got that funding to set up a business that is now working in order for you to benefit from that 7-year holiday tax. But then when you look at it, the Youth Enterprise Development Fund is not working. All the affirmative action that government has put in place are not working. And if they do work, then it's a child of someone who's known somewhere. It doesn't help the people who it's meant to help. There is zero monitoring and evaluation. So we do not restructure our programs to suit the challenges that we meet along the way. It's just like, oh, I look at you and I figure, maybe you need a pair of shoes. So I give you a pair of shoes. I don't know what your shoe size is. I don't know if you like the type of shoe I've given you. I just look at you and go like, I'm giving you a cowboy boot that's number 17, you know? And then I never come back to ask you, did the boot fit? Is it comfortable when you walk? Does it pinch, you know? Never, nothing like that. And I feel like it goes back to the lack of political goodwill, because we don't have servant leadership in this country. Now, what action is it that we as the people need to take? Because one, we do have a constitution, but we don't have constitutionalism. How do we entrench that in ourselves so that we are better placed to demand for our basic rights, which we are denied? Just basic rights, healthcare, education. Look at our children. They've been out of school for a very long time, and nobody right now is talking about improving the education infrastructure. The BBI does not mention that, does not mention our technological infrastructure. Instead, we young people are expected to be content with menial jobs in the name of kazi mtaani and wheelbarrownomics. Why do we always have to settle for less?
You know, you've spoken about very grave things, and I'll give 3 important individuals who have said important things, then I answer your question. Yash Gai, when we were making the constitution, said, and I agree with him, that Africa is a graveyard of beautifully written constitutions which are honored in breach. Powerful. My good teacher and friend Hastings Wilfred Opinyo Kothogendo wrote in 1972, the problem of Africa is constitutions without constitutionalism, hollow documents. And lastly, the great president of Chile, Salvador Allende, said of his own country, which is also true of ours, that in Chile we have all the laws dealing with all the things except one law, the law that says we should implement all the other laws. Cynical, but speaks. If you look at the pieces of legislation we have in this country, you'll be amazed. I said before you joined that I grew here, partly here in Nairobi, grew up partly here in Nairobi, partly in my rural home. I was in my rural home up to standard 5 in Usenge Primary School. I did not carry anything. I paid 20 shillings as fees. I never carried an exercise book because it was given at school. I never carried any textbook because it was given at school. When I came back to Nairobi in standard 6, I was here in Maringo, Jericho, and I went to school at St. Patrick's Primary School at 1 every day. We had lunch called buruga, made at the City Council kitchen here in next to Pumwani Hostel. The systems worked. Things were fumigated. I was in Jericho on Sunday, last Sunday, just driving, which I do often. The sewage is gone. In Buruburu, in Jericho, in Maringo, everywhere, the sewage system is gone. Are there bylaws? There are bylaws, for example, that say that hand-drawn carts shall not be used in the city center of Nairobi. We have Mikokoteni. So the problem is that there was a time in this country where we had men and women who loved this country. They earned very little. They had no constituency development fund. They had no ward development fund. They just had the will to do what they needed to do. That crop of politicians long disappeared, And the electorate has also been a problem in this regard. I dare want to say, and I'll irritate and annoy some, there is a crop of politicians in Kenya. As long as they are active in Kenyan politics, Kenya will never realize our potential. In Kiswahili, there is a word called uchuro. Uchuro in Kiswahili means bad omen. Kuna watu ambao wana uchuro katika siasa za Kenya. Kama hawajang'atuliwa, Kenya haitafikia vipeo vya ubora. Because wana ubinafsi. They are selfish. It is Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela who once said, when you treat politicians like gods, that is the day you release the devil. Oh, yeah. And I think in Kenya we have done that. And we have done it so badly that I go to church and I see somebody who never worships in my church, and he comes in when the service has started, and the clergyman stops even when they are administering the Holy Communion. To that, I must credit the Muslims. They will never do that. It's only my Christian church that does that. So I'm saying that we have laws. And that is why it is important to energize young people. The people must make a demand. Right now, the only reason why Nairobi appears to work is because of residents' associations. I'm sure you, wherever you live, you have residents' associations.
Course, yes.
You are taking care of your security. You are taking
Our
care
own
of
roads.
your own roads. You have your own water. You are doing your own roads, garbage collection, everything. The day we make demands, like they do in Europe and America, that is the day these individuals are going to wake up. In fact, if you were to ask me, Nairobi does not need members of parliament at all. Nairobi does not need MCAs at all. Just allow the residents' associations to run Nairobi, and you appoint and they hire a technical arm. Nairobi will change in 5 years. And we will be there. We'll not earn any salary. We'll just do the job. Nairobi will be the city in the sun that it was. So it is, when I listen to you and I feel your frustration, I hope that younger Kenyans are feeling this. Oh, yeah. I hope that I've seen the headline, the photograph in the Star newspaper today, the 30th day of November, a young man somewhere in my rural area in Nyanza, taking an old woman through the process of signing for the BBI. I'm certain that that lady has not read the report. The report has not been read to her. She's been made possibly to believe that this is the only way in which our son will become the president, and therefore he's signing for their son to be the president. I saw another one in Western Province, and I'm sure they have been told this is the only way in which one of our sons will become the prime minister, and I'm sure they think they are making their son the prime minister. And I'm sure in Ukambani they are being told this is the only way in which your son will become the vice president.
Once again.
And they are signing once again, and deputy president. So they are being misled. And yet the good book says, my people die and suffer because of ignorance. Lack of knowledge. Mm-hmm. But we will never tire. We will always say it as it is. Honorable Mwangale, I remember, once said, when he had given the report relating to the death of Josiah Mwangi Karuki, said, we have said it. Even if you do not respond, we have said it. We are saying it. And young people rise. I would be very happy if BBI goes on as it is. I would be so happy if a verdict is returned that the Kenyan people have rejected this thing 70 to 30%. It can happen. And no campaigning, no expensive campaigning, just using the social media and doing so on the basis of information, not anything else. But yet there is time. There is time, and I speak to you, my President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. You are the President of the Republic of Kenya. You are the one who has the mandate of the Republic of Kenya. It is of you that it will be said that during your watch, we pass this constitution. How I pray, my president, that you could listen to the cry of thy people, and that you shall hearken to their voices, and they are crying from the hilltops. They are crying from Nyanza, they are crying from the coast, they are crying from the 47 countries. Your own church, the Catholic Church, through the Episcopal Union, have written a letter saying they are dissatisfied. The evangelicals have said they are dissatisfied. The imams have said they are dissatisfied. Everybody appears to be dissatisfied. How you could listen to their voices, my president? How you could, that history may say of you, that you are a person who hearkened to the voice of his people and you did the right thing. We can still amend our constitution, but listen to us. The God that you worship, and I saw you recently, my president, greeting the Roman Catholic Pope at the seat of the Roman Catholic Church. How I wish that your visit softened your heart, and that you could now say with the Pope and with the Cardinal and with the Archbishops, behold, I have listened, and I will listen and reason with you. That is all I ask, my president. For my friend and kinsman, whom I respect, Raila Amolo Odinga, history will remember you for making your great contribution to this country. Why is it now that when we are asking you just to give us a few moments, you do not want to listen to us? I respect you. You are an elder. You are a contributor to this country. How you could listen to us, listen to voices from all the 47 counties, listen to young people, young and old, asking, you may be doing the right thing, but there are few creases that we want to iron out. How you could listen and take solace and wisdom from the Bible in the book of the prophet Isaiah, where it is said, let us come and reason together. That is all I ask. That is all Kenyans are asking. Some are scared to say what I'm saying, but they are beginning to say it because they mean well for this country. That is all we ask. Reason together.
So one last thing that I'd like for you to speak on is the spirit of Ubuntu. I was talking to a friend of mine in Zambia, and, you know, he told me, a few months ago, I used to think Kenya was a woke country. But now if someone was to ask me, I'd say Kenya is the most whitewashed African country. Before the missionaries came and decided to teach us how to hate ourselves, we had structures. And some of these structures work up to now. If you were to make a mistake right now, and your elders back in the village summoned you, wouldn't you be on the next flight together? Correct. You know? Yeah, because you're afraid. But then a court can summon you and you wouldn't go, you know, because it's the court. That's English. How do we go back to the African spirit of Ubuntu? Because I actually believe Africa was very advanced because Africa is the cradle of mankind. I believe without Africa, the world would perish. We basically are holding up the entire universe. We are feeding them. We are giving them our natural resources for all kinds of development, you know. We are even brain draining our continent to go and grow their economies. How do we bring back the spirit of Ubuntu? How do we teach generations to come that, you know, you're African, you're powerful, you don't have to have straight long hair or white skin in order for someone to believe that you're capable of doing so. Look at Africans who sit in positions in around the world. I mean, look at Obama. Let's just start from there. Look at African women doing great things around the globe. You know, they're sitting at the decision-making table, but then it doesn't trickle back to Africa. And I feel it's because we've lost the spirit of Ubuntu. How do we go back to Ubuntu?
Your analysis of the history, of course, is correct. And I would urge you to read Ngugi wa Thiong'o's Decolonizing the Mind. Ngugi gets it right. when he says that the mind is where the problem is, and slavery and colonization and neo-colonization have made us to believe that we are not good enough. It is true that there are aspects of African culture. It's not good to romanticize all aspects of African culture. There are certain cultural practices which, in my view, ought to be changed. But fundamentally, in matters of dispute resolution, I think that there are very positive aspects of African culture. I remember, you may not remember this, you are too young, when a judge called Sultan Aga Nyanya was falsely accused of having received a bribe, and there was somebody who wanted to testify against him, and that individual was from the Tiriki tribe. He said, I do not want that gentleman to swear using the Bible. He will lie. Let him swear through a Tiriki oath. And of course the man could not bear.
That's what Yuang was telling us.
Because there is immediate consequence. Because we are not, when we claim we are Christians or Muslims, some of us are very lukewarm and we don't care about this thing. And it is instructive now that in many African countries we are beginning to embrace old methods of dispute resolution. Mediation is the way we used to do things. Arbitration, that is the way we used to do things. So I can't agree with you more, but the most important thing is that we must regain our self-esteem. And I'm very glad that you are a lady and you have spoken about short hair. I've been speaking about this hair business. I know in many African, particularly in the media, women are told to wear Chinese hair, European hair. And my view is, if you respect and love yourself the way you are, you dignify yourself and dignify God. And your generation is going to be the generation that is going to do that. So I think that we've got to work at it. Some of us are already speaking about it, and it will come to happen. If not in your lifetime, you'll have made your contribution. Thank you.
Unless BBI is now telling us to appreciate our color, maybe it will also tell us to appreciate our hair. Maybe it's coming in BBI 3.
Maybe it's coming in the next BBI.
Right, I'm seeing a question from Elizabeth Karanja. Elizabeth Karanja is asking about the middle class apathy.
That is part of our problem. You know, the middle class in most African countries, perhaps we are nominally and notionally middle class by dint of our income. But in terms of our behavior, we are not true middle class. And I'm saying
we are
pseudo middle class. But in order to answer our question, the middle class are those who have an income, they have a mortgage, that crop of people. And when services don't work, as somebody once said, if the roads are bad, they buy a 4-wheel. If the schools don't work, you take your child to the group of schools or an academy. If things don't work, if the hospital system doesn't work, you go into the private. If NHIF doesn't work, you go to AR, and you go to APA, you go to Jubilee. I think that is the problem. The day the middle class is squeezed, and COVID has to some extent squeezed us in the middle class sufficiently to begin to make us wake up to the reality. You will remember the Arab Spring. The reason why the Arab Spring succeeded is because the middle class came. The professionals, the doctors, the engineers, the business people came to the streets. Recently in Mali, it was the same thing. In Sudan, immediately the middle class comes into the arena and begin to work with other people in the society. That is when the political leadership begins to respond. Part of the middle class is this. We assume that we are the ones who will be appointed into public office by the politician. You are looking to be appointed a permanent secretary. You are looking to be appointed an ambassador. You are looking to be appointed. Therefore, you don't want to annoy the politician.
You're always in glass.
Yes. So some of us, at least I speak for myself, I don't expect anybody to appoint me into anything. So I speak my mind the way I speak my mind, only to ensure that even when I do so respectfully. But if you are thinking about being appointed into public office and gaining personally, then you will always want to worship the politician. And the politician knows this, because your typical middle class is also an influencer. You'll discover that if you are middle class, you influence about 20 people who ask you, now, how should I vote? Therefore, you wield power. But if you use that power positively, you'll use it to educate. And I must say and agree with you that the Kenyan middle class has been a letdown. But there was a time when the Kenyan middle class was active. I remember in 1992, when people were rising against Daniel Moi, the middle class were there. When we were doing the constitution, I remember us walking in the streets with the late Wangari Maathai, Martha Karua, Rachel Mamo, fighting against the judiciary at that time. And there were people, greater people than I, doing that in the streets. And the government was shaken because the middle class was alive and well. The middle class has gone into comatose.
They want to be comfortable.
Yeah. So I want to hear the engineers reading the constitution, the BBI proposals. I want to hear the lawyers doing that. I want to hear the accountants doing that. I want to hear them reading and coming out and confronting these politicians with reasoned responses. Perhaps they will retrace their steps.
Until then,
kitanda ulichokilalia ulichokitandika
jifunze kukilalia.
Jifunze kukilalia. Na kumbuka pia wanasema Waswahili, kitanda usichokilalia kunguni wake huwajui. Lakini kitanda hiki cha Kenya tunakilalia, tunawajua kunguni wake.
Na kuna jambo ambalo umesema, hata nikijaribu hata mimi Kiswahili kidogo, yote haiko Kiingereza na Kiswahili inakuwa ikimuumana. Anyway, let's try and summon my Swahili. But the question is, there are people you mentioned about the people who have entrenched themselves in the leadership of this country, in their systems, and they feel like this country is part of their personal property. Like you can wake up in the morning and say, okay, tukate konai barabara iende huko. What does it, I mean, how do you feel as part of a Kenyan as well, that shares in the interest of this country and the destiny of this nation? But there are people who sit somewhere in a corner being told there's a system, there's a deep state that makes decision. Where does it leave PLO Lumumba?
It's frustrating, and we are a very young nation, really. And we only regained our independence in 1963. We are just 59 years of age. Countries go through that phase, and I think that the beauty of this Constitution 2010, its problems notwithstanding, it was beginning to empower people. When you talk about people participation, we talk about impeachment of people. These were avenues that were created deliberately to tell those who are in political leadership that when you get there, we have means of getting you out when you don't realize what we asked you to do. And that is being torpedoed through this mechanism. So I think that it's going to take time. There is this crop of politicians who almost think that the country owes them. They almost think that they are demigods, and countries have had such leaders. But the beauty of history and the beauty of nature is that kilicho na mwanzo kina mwisho. That is my joy.
There's something I've seen here, sir. And you've mentioned about the history of Constitution, the agitation to change Constitution 2010, the history of intentions to mutilate Constitution 2010. When ODM started telling us about changing the constitution, they were telling us the burden is too heavy.
Yeah.
Tunataka kupunguza mzigo, punda amechoka. I remember Baba himself used to go around telling us about punda amechoka, punda amechoka, punda amechoka. We came back again and we started talking about the bloated government. President Uhuru Kenyatta has come out. I remember there's a time he was being asked why he's not performing, why Jubilee is not, and he said that the reason why they are not performing is because he inherited a constitution that expanded the government. And he said Kibaki never had to deal with that.
Yes.
So today he's telling us we need a bigger government to function better. Why did he not add all these MPs in this first time in 2013?
Memory is short and selective. Labda punda amekuwa farasi sasa. But the truth be told, if they had come, and when I look at the proposals that were made by my good friend Ekuru Aukot in his Punguza, they made more sense. He said, reduce the counties. Reduce them to 18. Then the current counties become sub-counties. Said, let us reduce the size of parliament. Let us restructure Nairobi. But because I think that the BBI fundamentally is designed to address very short-term political interests. Fundamentally. All these are the things unaviona hivi. Ni vipambe too. The real thing, you see the capsule, the capsule that you swallow. The real medicine is not the capsule itself. That is only meant to make it easier to swallow. The killer medicine is inside. So the real thing in BBI, let me be blunt from where I stand, and I want to be persuaded otherwise. The real thing is that you want to expand the executive, so that when you go to elections in 2022, it is easier to build an ethnic coalition. That, I think, is what the political class want to do. The rest are sweeteners, which need not be the subject of constitutional amendment. They are things that we don't need. And we must unmask this and say it, even if we annoy others. That is the real intention.
There's something here I've also seen. Kenyans to pay shillings 20 billion a year to fund parliament.
I mean, you are going to create bureaucracies, because you are going to have, when you create 70 constituencies, you are going to have the ward manager. You are going to have, depending on how we produce men or women through the electoral process, our parliament could easily be over 500. You are going to create offices of the leader of the opposition with the things that come with it. We are going to create the deputy officer, prime minister, the minister. I mean, 20 billion to finance. You have people who, when they get into parliament, free car, mortgage, mileage allowances. I mean, do you need that at all? Do you need that?
Also, there's the issue of employed people paying unemployment tax for the unemployed people. So our government, rather than create jobs,
so it's like you guys work, then you pay each other. Pay yourselves. Now PLO jikaze ulipe mimi.
Fanyeni tu kazi mlipane wenyewe kwa wenyewe. This is coming hot in the heels of the 3% turnover tax yenye mama mboga is expected to pay.
Yes.
How is it that we have a finance minister who imagines that our economy is going to grow by overtaxing us?
I mean, you can't, hata ngombe ukimkamua, kuna mahali ambapo sasa
nikuwa sasa,
itakuwa ni maziwa. Kitakuwa ni maziwa. Lazima ngombe unayemkamua sharti umlishe ili azalishe maziwa. Lakini kilichoko sasa, umejua, Mwalimu Nyerere alikuwa akisema hivi: siri ya maendeleo ni watu, ardhi na siasa safi. Na siri nyingine ni kuwa na vijana wenye malezi bora, siha njema na bongo kali. Tuna watu, tuna ardhi, tunachokosa ni siasa safi.
Siasa safi.
Wow. Alright. Tunataka kuchukua simu pia. Bunge la Mwananchi iko wazi. In the next 10 minutes we pick your calls. Bunge la Mwananchi iko wazi, nambari ni 0779-800-010, 0779-800-010. You can call in and contribute to the conversation that's going on. 10 minutes only. So simu ikikuja unaingia, unasema mambo yako haraka unasonga, because we have 9 minutes left. So we are going to use that to pick calls very fast. Ukiingia unasema mambo yako haraka upesi, alafu unaponyoka. Na nambari ni 0779-800-010, 0779-800-010, 0779-800-010. Bunge iko wazi. Leo nasubiri simu daktari. President Uhuru Kenyatta, every time there's a problem, it comes in. I remember in Mombasa, kasema simu imezimwa, wale watu wanakula mali ya umma, mtajua mimi ni nani. In Mombasa, it came in the other day. COVID millionaires, the president comes out very angry, furious. The culprits were stealing money that's supposed to be used to treat people. The Kenyans, I'm going to deal with you. We're still waiting for him to deal with these people.
He has a culture of huffing and puffing and blowing and doing
on this particular issue, I think that the president may mean well, but when you are dealing with, I personally was quite clear in my mind that you cannot investigate KEMSA in 21 days. It is impossible, unless you just want to rush it and have the DPP recommend people. And I was very happy in this regard that there was an attempt to meet the 21 days, and that the ESCC did send files to the DPP, and the DPP, upon scrutiny, which I think was good, that is why institutions countercheck one another, said they there are certain aspects of it that need to be re-examined. You will see today, my good friend Twalib has said that upon thorough examination, they now need foreign assistance, mutual legal assistance, in order to prepare a watertight case. I think that is a good thing, because you also just don't want to recommend that people be prosecuted without sufficient evidence. They are people's reputation that you've got to deal with. So you don't just, because people are crying blood, you therefore give them blood. And the only way, there are two ways of dealing with such situations. The prosecution aspect of it is good, and then there is the administrative aspect, that immediately there are allegations against you, you leave office. You are removed from office until the process is completed. So I can see a president who at certain times anaumwa na maumivu ya wananchi wake. But it must be remembered that it cannot be instantaneous, unless you want people to be taken to Uhuru Park and shot dead, which you would not want. So once you are in a democratic dispensation with institutions, you've got to bear the pain of patience.
All right.
Yes.
All right. Hello, good morning.
The other thing that I wanted to say before the question is asked is this. You know, when you read the document, the bill is called Promoters of the Bill Are Building Bridges Initiative. I didn't know that Building Bridges is initiative is a legal person capable of promoting anything.
All right, good morning. Hello.
Good morning, Bitok.
Jambo, nazungumza na nani?
This is Olela.
Olela, very quickly.
Yes. So I would just want to Professor to speak about something. Agenda Africa Union aspired that 2020 will be the year of silencing the guns.
Okay.
But we have had guns in Uganda and Nigeria by the army against their own citizens. There are guns in Ethiopia, South Sudan, and Somalia. And we have not seen any other president making forays in that area. It's only President Kagame that has tried to bring peace in this. So why is African Union mum on this?
Okay.
Two, on AFCTA, Continental Free Trade Area, COVID-19 provided an opportunity for Continental Free Trade Area to take foothold. But nothing has happened, because imagine if Kenya were to produce masks for the entire continent, and Uganda were to produce PPEs for the entire continent, Africa will be in another place.
All right, thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, Gerard.
Good morning to you. Am I speaking to?
You're speaking to Kinoti Kirui, niko hapa Nairobi.
Tuambie.
Salamia Professor Lumumba na Lucio hapo.
Asante sana, tumesalimika.
Nimependa vile Professor Lumumba ameongea. Yeye huwa anaongea point blank. So ametoboa sana mambo na BBI. Hii kuna tu sugarcoating, lakini watu wanataka power. Juzi Wakenya wengi ama magazeti ya Kenya ama vyombo vya habari za Kenya walikuwa wanaangazia sana siasa za Amerika. Na wameshinda kuongea juu ya Uganda ama Ethiopia, Somalia. You can imagine, huwa anaongea point blank, direct and always bold. Thank you, Bwana Gerard and Lucio.
All right. Nasema the tackle is bold, credible and informed. Asante sana. It's in the spirit of the tackle. Good morning. Jambo. Hello.
Gerard.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning. My question goes to Professor. Professor is a good admirer, and I also follow him so much, especially in his speech, the magnification of Africa. Is he one of the states, for example, in Tanzania there? Two, Professor Lumumba is a good admirer of good things working. I saw him representing this thing called IPC, and I think in his mind he struggled. Is that in order? Thank you. Love you.
All right. Thank you. Have a good day. All right. Hello.
Hello. How are you doing? You talk.
How are you, sir?
Good.
Who is this from Tennessee?
This is from Mbui.
Oh, Mbui. You're calling in from Tennessee, United States of America. Ama nimeona wapi?
Sometimes, numbers are played around,
All right. Tuambie haraka, bro.
Yes, I fully support what Professor Lumumba is saying. That, these three guys, the president, Raila Odinga and Ruto, they have their personal interests first. Kenyans.
All right.
And that's why you see they are fighting for the BBI, they are entangling the BBI, you know. But at the end of the day, the BBI is too vague to provide Kenyans with their aspirations.
Okay.
So I know the BBI, they are fighting hard to pass it through, but still needs to be worked on. There's a lot of work to be done on it.
Thank you.
To also comment.
Hello. Good morning.
Morning, Gerald.
Who am I speaking to?
My name is Kotute. Johnson Kotute. I have a suggestion to Professor. Based on his presentation, it appears that we have a serious problem as a country in terms of understanding the whole discourse of constitutional change. The public are being misled by the politicians as usual, and we are bound to make a decision based on the preference of the politicians that we heavily support. But on his submission, my suggestion is that if the legal minds, like Professor, could be able to generate or to mount a case, or even to go to the Supreme Court or courts for interpretation, for them to interpret or to find out that the process that they are taking is not legal or it is not the right way to do it, so that we may be able to stop it at that point. But if we depend on politicians, we are being manipulated just like the marionettes based on the political support that we or the leader that we support. Okay. So what is the role of, because I saw what they were doing even when it came to IBC, when they were doing the issues of when there was they challenging the elections, there was a very strong force from the legal wall. I would have really wished to see them, the likes of Professor, the likes of Mother Karua, let them go to court and help us sort out this thing. But if we leave it to the politicians, we'll only be manipulated based on the political persuasions that we support. Thank you, Gerard.
All right, thank you so much. I think the machibu hizo ndio simu tumechukua za mwisho. You'll not take more calls and to give a professor some time to respond.
There is something that I saw Dr. Juang saying, which I found very interesting. I had not thought about it, but I thought it was very ingenious. Because he said the law says that we collect signatures.
Yes.
And therefore the IEBC will verify. The IEBC is not a depository of signatures. Which signatures will they be comparing the signed ones? And that I thought was very ingenious. So I think that even these little issues must be examined. And Kotut is saying that action should be taken. I think there is now movement. People are thinking very seriously that these are serious matters which ought to be dealt with. The next few days will give birth to certain activities which will be designed to inform the process in a manner that will be helpful to the people of Kenya. I already know that my good friend David Ndii and his compatriots are already in court on this particular matter.
Kulinda Katiba.
Yeah, and Kulinda Katiba. And I think that the Supreme Court will have occasion to deal with the matter. The Magufulification, I think that there, as I've already said, I've answered this question. There are a number of things which I think should be improved. I'm one who believes in freedom of the press. I believe that the press should be allowed in any event. Whatever you do, you will always be criticized, even if you do good things. Yeah. There are people who, on a daily basis, they wake up with only one agenda: to criticize you. It doesn't matter. And there are people who just hate you. You ask them, why do you hate the fellow? Say, no, I just hate the fellow. So if you want to worry about each one of them, then I'm not worried. Then the question he says, you didn't ask it very clear, but I'm going to ask it clearly. Did I struggle appearing for the chairman of the IEBC? No. In fact, I think that the decision to nullify the election was wrong. I think it was wrong. In fact, the very fact that it was not a unanimous decision, a majority decision, and I keep on asking people, read the dissenting opinion of Juang and Joki. Then you will discover that this particular, our argument succeeded, and to the extent that my argument was to demonstrate that the chairman of the IEBC did not commit any electoral offense, and he was not found to have committed any. And remember that the decision in the Kenyan case has been cited in Zimbabwe and rejected. It has been cited in Nigeria and rejected. It is the dissenting opinions that have been upheld. And that is how you grow jurisprudence. And in any event, lawyers don't urge their own cases. Lawyers urge cases of their clients. But on this one, I'm very clear. I'm very clear that it was a wrong decision. I'm clear in my mind. I'm convinced that Uhuru Kenyatta won the election the first time, the other things notwithstanding. And I need not convince anybody, but that is my view on the evidence that I saw. Africa Continental Free Trade Area, as read together with Agenda 2063, is a good thing. Remember, the Africa Continental Free Trade Area was to take effect from the 1st of July, the year 2020, and it was postponed because of COVID. I can't agree with you more. The Africa Continental Free Trade Area, if it is implemented effectively, will open tariff and will remove tariff and non-tariff barriers. I can give you a personal example. Somebody sent me a parcel from Abuja in Nigeria last week. Up till now, I've not received the parcel. If it was in the United States of America, I would have received it the following day. And the reason why, they are verifying. The customs is verifying. I've had to pay duty, and it's just a shirt. Taking 1 week. I mean, if you are a trader and you are dealing with this, you are dealing with perishables, you can imagine how it would be impacted. I know that the ministers for finance did meet last week, and the Continental Free Trade Area is going to be implemented from the month of January. And I've had a long conversation with the new Secretary General, Wamkele Mene, and he himself is open to ideas, and I think that is now our duty to ensure that we support it. My only worry is this. If at the regional level we have struggled with the East African common market, if in SADC we are struggling with the common market, if in ECOWAS the border of Nigeria and Ghana and Togo have been closed for the last 1 year, if we are not very careful, we'll not earn the dividends of ACTFA. But I can't agree with you more. We will easily be a market of 1.4 billion. So let us look to the future with great hope. But we must work at it. We must not just pray and fast as we do in Africa. We pray and fast and also work.
All right.
Thank you.
Lucia, give us your tackle of the day.
Oh man, do I really have a tackle of the day? I think I'm going to donate my time to the professor. He speaks better English than I do and can articulate these issues.
Lakini atuache Kiingereza kidogo akienda. All right, so I want to give you an opportunity. I'll split it into two. The first opportunity is I want you to speak to the three main leaders who want us to get united, but they cannot get united themselves. We'll start with the president.
Your Excellency, history has placed upon your laps a great opportunity to demonstrate patriotism and statesmanship. You now have that opportunity. We are confronted with an initiative which is controversial. Your people with different shades of opinion have understood what you intend to do, but they are asking critical and fundamental questions. A statesman must look to the next generation, not to the next election. Embrace the beautiful ideas that are being brought to the fore. Look at them and call your people to reason together, that history may say of you that you are a leader who listened, that history may say of you that you are a leader who was compassionate. I urge you to listen, to hearken, and to act.
Deputy President?
Deputy President, I am alive courtesy of the media that you desire to serve this country at the highest level. History does not begrudge you that desire. Ambition, if it is unbridled, is dangerous. You are a young man with good ideas possibly. I don't share in many of your political ideas, but I believe that you have demonstrated over the years that you are a man of steel with good ideas, which if tempered with love for country can make you contribute in a positive way. How I urge you to continue doing the right thing and to embrace ideas that can help you. And indeed, when people differ on the basis of ideas, it means that they are open to persuasion. Persuade me that your agenda is for the general good, and I'm happy with you thus far that you've been urging the people to reason together so that we may have a win-win situation. Continue speaking that language. Continue speaking with your president. Continue speaking to us, because I think that in terms of having identified the country's needs, you are right. If we need to amend the constitution, let us do so in a manner that is not contentious. May God bless you.
Raila Amolo Odinga, you called him Mzee, so you nianze na Mzee Raila Amolo Odinga.
Mzee Raila Amolo Odinga, when the history of Kenya is written, you'll have more than a paragraph. You've been here since 1982. You have gone to prison because you agitated for certain things that were in the interest of the nation. You have contested the presidency in 1997, in 2007, in 2013, in 2017. There is a sense in which some people in your constituency think that the crowning thing in your life must be the presidency. I urge you not to be persuaded by their woos and cajolements. I believe that you can be a greater statesman. You have good ideas. Perhaps this BBI has some beautiful things, but I refuse to believe that those things are as beautiful as you are marketing them. We are not in a hurry. Everybody who loves and thinks of you genuinely are saying, pause and ask and listen. It pains me when you tell the church there is no time. It pains me when you tell the professionals there is no time. It pains me when you tell the Muslim there is no time. When we are thinking about the history of a nation, there is always time. How could you change that? Embrace what you are being told. You must not agree with all of them, but go to my good friend and your friend and our President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, talk to William Samoei Ruto and all the other politicians, and let us reason together, because the divine instruction and the divine desire is, if my people who are called by my name repent and they come, I reason with them, then it will be great. That is all I ask of you. That is all I ask of you, that history may remember you as a leader who was moved by the force of reason, even when you thought otherwise. God bless you.
Wow. Now comes to the moment, the tackle of the day. The tackle of the day is where you remember when Moses was taking the children of Israel from Egypt. He parted the sea. This is where you part the sea. You hit where it needs to be hit, without apologies.
I'm going to be spiritual about it, because we are confronted with a situation with a document called the BBI bill. I remember in those days of yore, whether you are Christian or not, that a man called Elijah was confronted by the 450 prophets of Baal, and he told the Israelites, do not waver between two opinions. If God is God, worship him. If Baal is God, worship him. And I also remember in the book of the prophet Joshua, now that our politicians are fond of giving biblical analogies, sometimes they are Moses, sometimes they are Joshua. Let them remember Joshua chapter 24, verse 15. Choose you now whom you shall serve, the Lord God or the Lord of the Amorites in whose land you dwell. As for me and my house, I shall serve the Lord. Today, Kenya, you are confronted with a document called the BBI. It promises heaven, but when I read it, I don't even see earth. Choose you now whether you shall vote it. Read it, but in its present form, it is a document that is only fit for one thing, fit for rejection.
Thank you. I wish I could just close without saying anything because that was heavy. Anyway, wow. Thank you so much, sir, for coming in.
Thank you.
I mean, I can't thank you enough. I really appreciate you. Thank you so much for making time. And we need more of this wisdom. So you can make more time and have this conversation. For the tacklers who have been tuned in for the last 2 hours and 12 minutes, thank you so much for being with us. I wish I could also continue taking calls. Naona kuna missed calls hapa kadhaa mingi sana. Next time probably we'll try and balance it better. But thank you so much for tuning in. The comments as well, I wish I could read them. But I will naona watu wengi sana. A lot of people are appreciating you. They are saying they need to see you time and again. When it allows you, we hope to see you again. Yeah, thank you. All right, thank you so much, guys. The Tacklas, nashukuru sana the Tacklas. This is the tackle, and the tackle ends now. I'll see you again tomorrow. Bye bye.